Some love stories are celebrated because they are beautiful. Some are remembered because they are tragic. And some are remembered because they refuse to end, even after death. Fame gives people everything the world desires. It gives applause, power, admiration, and immortality in memory. But fame also takes everything away: privacy, peace, and time. Behind the glamorous headlines and historic achievements, there exist quieter stories. Stories of two lives bound so tightly together that even death could not separate them. This is not romance fiction. This is not mythology. This is history written in silence, sealed beneath stone, and remembered in graves. John Lennon was already larger than life when Yoko Ono entered it. A Beatle, a rebel, a voice that shaped a generation. Yoko Ono was different. Avant-garde, intellectual, unapologetic. Their meeting was not cinematic, it was inevitable. Two artists moving toward the same orbit. From the beginning, the world opposed them. Fans blamed Yoko for the breakup of the Beatles. Journalists portrayed her as a manipulator. But behind closed doors, Lennon found something he never had before: peace. They created art together. They protested war together. They slept, dreamed, and worked as one. On December 8, 1980, John Lennon was murdered in front of his New York apartment. Yoko Ono did not collapse in public grief. She chose silence. For the rest of her life, she never remarried, never replaced him, never allowed time to erase him. Though Lennon Wright*s remains were scattered, their love never was. In memory, in legacy, in intention, they remain united. Johnny Cash was a man walking towards self-destruction. Addiction followed him everywhere. So did guilt. June Carter saw something else. She saw a man worth saving. Their love did not begin with romance. It began with patience. June stood beside Johnny through relapses, failures, and darkness. She anchored him to life. Johnny once admitted that without June, he would be dead. June Carter Cash died in May 2003. Johnny followed her 4 months later. He was done living without her. They now rest side by side in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Two graves telling one story. Elizabeth Taylor was beauty itself. Richard Burton was fire. Their meeting ignited scandal. Affairs, divorce, public outrage. They loved loudly. They fought violently. They married twice and divorced twice. But separation never erased the bond. When Richard Burton died in 1984, Elizabeth Taylor was shattered. Though she lived decades longer, her final request was clear. She wanted to rest beside him. In death, the chaos ended. Only memory remained. Their love story was quiet. No scandals, no headlines. Only discovery. Pierre Curie believed in Marie when science doubted her. Together, they unlocked the secrets of radioactivity. Pierre died suddenly in an accident. Marie never recovered emotionally. She continued their work alone, honoring him in every achievement. Today, they lie together in the Pantheon in Paris, united in life's work and in death. Bogart was older. Bacall was young. Hollywood doubted them. Their marriage was strong, private, and loyal. When Bogart died of cancer, Bacall lost her anchor. Years later, her ashes were placed beside his. Not for fame, for peace. Some of these loves were loud. Some were quiet. Some were misunderstood. But all of them shared one truth. They did not want eternity alone. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow never imagined themselves as legends. They were children of the Great Depression, poor, angry, and trapped in a world with no mercy. Bonnie dreamed of poetry and escape. Clyde dreamed of revenge against a system that had already broken him. When they met, something immediate and dangerous ignited. They did not promise each other safety. They promised loyalty. They robbed together. They fled together. They slept with guns beside their pillows. Bonnie wrote poems about death long before it came. Clyde knew there would be no old age. On May 23, 1934, they were ambushed. Their car was shredded by bullets. They died together without surrender. Families buried them separately at first, but history refused to separate them. Their story became a symbol, not of crime, but of devotion without fear. Queen Victoria ruled the largest empire the world had ever known. But she was powerless against grief. Prince Albert was not only her husband, he was her emotional compass. When Albert died in 1861, Victoria collapsed inward. She withdrew from public life. She wore black for 40 years. Albert's rooms were preserved exactly as they were. His clothes were laid out daily. His presence was treated as eternal. When Queen Victoria finally died, she was buried beside Prince Albert, dressed in white, holding his hand. Their love did not end. It froze in time. They were the faces of the jazz age. Beautiful, brilliant, reckless. Scott Fitzgerald wrote novels that defined a generation. Zelda inspired them and suffered for them. Their marriage was filled with excess, jealousy, and instability. Alcoholism haunted Scott. Mental illness consumed Zelda. They destroyed each other slowly, painfully. Scott died believing he was forgotten. Zelda died years later in a hospital fire. They now share a grave in Maryland. Two restless spirits finally quiet. Sid Vicious and Nancy Spungen were not a love story. They were an explosion. Addiction, violence, and chaos surrounded them. They fed each other's demons. Nancy was found dead in a hotel room. Sid was arrested. Released. Before the truth could surface, Sid overdosed and died. Their ashes were later placed together. Their story is not romantic. It is a warning written in blood. Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward rejected Hollywood drama. They chose privacy over publicity. Their marriage lasted over 50 years. No scandals. No chaos. Paul once said, "Why go out for a hamburger when you have steak at home?" When Paul Newman died, Joanne withdrew from the world. Their burial place remains private. A final act of humility. Their love did not demand attention. It demanded honesty. Frida Kahlo lived in constant pain. Her body was broken. Her heart was wounded. Diego Rivera loved her fiercely and betrayed her repeatedly. They divorced. They remarried. They fought endlessly. Yet neither could survive emotionally without the other. When Frida died, Diego was destroyed. He asked that his ashes be placed beside hers. Even betrayal could not separate them. Some of these loves were beautiful. Some were violent. Some were unbearably sad. But all of them carried the same truth. They chose togetherness, even in death. Napoleon Bonaparte ruled Europe through force and strategy. But in matters of love, he was powerless. Josephine was his obsession. Older, imperfect, deeply human. Napoleon wrote her letters filled with longing and jealousy. Even while conquering nations, his heart remained unsettled without her. But history demanded an heir. Politics demanded sacrifice. Napoleon divorced Josephine, not because he stopped loving her, but because power left him no choice. When Josephine died, Napoleon collapsed in grief. Years later, dying alone in exile, he whispered her name. He wished to be buried beside her. History denied him that mercy. Some love stories do not end together. They end in regret. Rudolph Valentino was the first global male sex symbol. Women fainted, studios controlled him. Natasha Rambova was intelligent, artistic, and strong-willed. Hollywood despised her influence over Valentino. Their marriage was sabotaged by contracts, gossip, and control. Love became a liability. They divorced. When Valentino died suddenly at just 31, the world mourned loudly. Natasha mourned privately. Years later, her ashes were placed beside his memorial. Fame separated them in life. Death reunited their memory. Charlie Chaplin was a legend. Una O'Neill was young enough to be his daughter. The world judged them mercilessly. But they ignored the noise. They married. They built a family. They lived quietly in Switzerland. Their love lasted more than 30 years, longer than Chaplin's fame. When Chaplin died in 1977, Una never recovered emotionally. She followed him years later. They are buried side by side. Time proved what critics could not. Love does not obey public opinion. Rachmaninoff was a composer haunted by exile and memory. Natalia Satina was his calm. Their love was private, steady, unmoving. When Rachmaninoff died far from his homeland, Natalia ensured he would not rest alone. They lie together, music finally giving way to silence. Mumtaz Mahal died giving birth. Shah Jahan lost more than a wife, he lost his soul. His grief reshaped architecture. The Taj Mahal was not built as a palace, but as a promise. When Shah Jahan died, he was buried beside Mumtaz. Two graves beneath one of the world's greatest monuments. Love immortalized in marble. History remembers famous names, but millions of lovers remain unnamed. Actors who never became stars. Artists history forgot. Ordinary people who loved deeply. They chose the same grave not for fame, but for peace. Their silence is their legacy. Fame disappears. Applause fades. Statues crumble. But love, real love, sometimes refuses to end. These couples lived under pressure, judgment, and expectation. They died quietly. And in that final silence, they chose not to be alone. The same earth, the same stone, the same grave. This is not romance. This is devotion. This is graveyard of fame.